Rain
Let
covered
her
Houndy
go
like a
or I
silver
blow your
curtain.
head up.
At 1:30 a.m., the streets were quieter than usual, but Busan never truly slept. Neon signs reflected on the wet pavement, and the ocean wind carried the smell of salt and gasoline. Avery Collins pedaled her delivery bike through the drizzle, her tires cutting thin lines through shallow puddles. Her insulated delivery bag knocked softly against her back with every turn. It had been 4 years since she moved to Korea. 4 years of long shifts, strange looks, and learning to survive in a city that still sometimes felt foreign. She pushed harder against the pedals. One last order. Then she could go home. The pickup was from a high-end restaurant near Dalmaji Hill. The package was different from the usual orders. It was small, wrapped in smooth black paper, sealed carefully. The delivery instructions were brief. Private entrance behind Nocturne. Signature required. Avery wiped rain from her forehead. Nocturne was one of the most exclusive nightclubs in Houndy. She had never been inside. She usually dropped food at side doors or kitchen docks. But this address led to something else. She locked her bike near an unmarked steel door behind the building. The music from the club above was faint, heavy bass vibrating through the walls. She pressed the buzzer beside the door. A soft click sounded. The door opened. A tall man in a dark suit stood in front of her. His face was blank, unreadable. He looked at her, then at the package in her hand. "Delivery," Avery said calmly. He stepped aside without speaking. Her instincts told her to stay outside. But the app paid double for verified delivery. Rent was due. So she followed him inside. The hallway was dim and narrow. The lights were soft and golden. At the end of the corridor, the space opened into a hidden lounge. Black leather sofas lined the walls. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting broken light across polished floors. The air smelled of expensive cologne and cigar smoke. At the far end of the room, behind a wide ebony desk, sat a man. He didn't look up at first. He slowly turned a glass of whiskey in his hand, ice clinking against the sides. When he finally raised his head, his eyes locked onto hers. Park Jae-hyun. Even seated, he looked powerful. His black suit fit perfectly across broad shoulders. A faint scar traced along his jaw. His gaze was steady and dark, sharp enough to make most people nervous. "You're not the usual rider," he said quietly. His voice was low and smooth, calm but commanding. "The app sends whoever is closest," Avery replied. Her tone was even. She didn't lower her eyes. He studied her. Rain had dampened her jacket. A few curls had escaped her helmet and framed her face. She stood straight, holding the package out without hesitation. "Sign here," she said, extending the tablet toward him. "Then I'm gone." He stood up slowly. He was taller than she expected. The room seemed smaller when he moved closer. His steps were measured, controlled. He stopped just in front of her.
You're not the usual
"You came
rider.
through the
The
wrong
app
entrance,"
assigns whoever is
he said
closest.
softly.
You entered through
"This
the wrong
package
door.
wasn't
I
meant
followed
for
the
public
instructions given.
attention." Avery's jaw tightened. "Then your instructions should be clearer."
Signature required.
I followed what
You
was
don't seem
written.
nervous.
For a
Should I
moment,
be?
silence
people
filled the
are.
I'm
space.
just doing my job.
One corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. "Bold," he said. "I'm just doing my job." His eyes did not leave her face. He looked at her as if trying to understand something. Most people in that room would have been nervous. She was not. Finally, he took the tablet from her hand. He signed his name with steady strokes and handed it back. But before she could step away, he reached into his pocket. He placed something small in her palm. A black card. No name. No title. Just a silver number pressed into the surface. "If there's confusion next time," he said calmly, "call this directly." Avery looked at the card for a second, then slipped it into her jacket pocket.
There's confusion.
"There won't
next
be a
time.
next
Call
time,"
this
she
number
replied.
directly.
His
There
gaze
won't be a
deepened
next
slightly.
time.
"We'll see." She turned and walked back down the hallway without waiting for permission. The suited guard opened the door for her. The rain felt colder when she stepped outside. She unlocked her bike and rode away, but she could still feel his eyes on her back. For 3 days, the black card stayed in her pocket. When she returned home that night, she placed it in a drawer beside her bed. She told herself it meant nothing. Just a rich man's ego. Still, every time she reached into that drawer for spare change or receipts, her fingers brushed against the smooth surface. On the third night, her phone buzzed during her shift. New order. High payout. Pickup, same restaurant. Delivery address. Private entrance behind Nocturne. Avery stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she accepted the order. The payout flashed on Avery Collins' screen. Triple. She stared at the number for a few seconds. It was more than she would earn in 2 full nights of riding through rain and traffic. Rent was still hanging over her head. Bills did not wait for pride. Pickup location, the same high-end restaurant. Delivery address, private entrance behind Nocturne. Avery exhaled slowly and accepted the order. When she arrived, the suited guard opened the door almost immediately. This time there was recognition in his eyes. He stepped aside without a word. She was led past the hidden lounge and down a different hallway. Frosted glass panels lined the walls. The air felt cooler, quieter. At the end was a private office. Park Jae-hyun stood by a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Haeundae's skyline. The city lights shimmered below like scattered stars. He had removed his jacket. His sleeves were rolled neatly, revealing dark ink that curled along his forearm. He did not turn at once. "You came," he said. "Money talks louder than pride," Avery replied. She set the black package on his desk. "Sign. I'll be gone." He faced her slowly. The shadows from the city lights sharpened the lines of his face. His eyes lingered on her longer than before. "You kept the card?" he said quietly. "It's in a drawer," she answered. "Doesn't mean anything." A faint smile touched his lips. He crossed the room in steady steps. The space between them grew smaller. Avery forced herself not to move back. "You're not afraid," he observed. "Should I be? Most people are." He reached for the package but did not open it. Instead, his arm brushed lightly against hers. The contact was brief but deliberate. "You should be," he said calmly. "Threats don't pay my bills." For a moment, silence stretched between them. His gaze dropped to her hand holding the tablet. When she extended it, he did not take it immediately. Instead, his fingers wrapped around her wrist. Not painfully. Just enough to stop her from pulling away. "Don't make me wait 3 days next time," he said softly. Her pulse quickened, but her voice stayed steady. "There won't be a next time." His eyes darkened slightly, but he released her. He signed the tablet and handed it back. She turned and walked out without looking behind her. 2 nights later, her phone buzzed again. New order. High payout. But this time the address was different. Pickup. Private. Delivery. Gwangan Heights. No restaurant name. Cash tip promised. Curiosity mixed with caution. She accepted. Gwangan Heights was far from the neon noise of Haeundae. The streets were quiet and uphill, lined with modern villas and gated homes. When she reached the black gate, it slid open before she touched the buzzer. A different man waited inside. Older. Scarred knuckles. Watchful eyes. He led her through a minimalist courtyard with a small koi pond reflecting the moonlight. Inside, the house was calm and silent. Park Jae-hyun stood in the open living room. No suit tonight. Just a black cashmere sweater that fit close to his frame and dark trousers. Without the jacket, he looked less formal but somehow more dangerous. "You're following me now?" Avery asked. "You accepted the job," he replied. She placed the small unmarked box on a low table. "You could have sent anyone." "I don't send anyone for something that matters." She crossed her arms. "I'm a delivery rider. That's all." His gaze swept over her. Rain-damp jacket. Helmet in her hand. Defiant posture. "I protect what's mine," he said. She laughed softly. "I'm not yours." "Not yet." The words were calm, certain. The air felt heavier. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw. He reached up slowly and brushed a stray curl from her cheek. His fingers lingered for a second before dropping. "You keep coming back," he murmured. "Because you keep paying triple." Neither moved. No kiss. No touch beyond that brief moment. Just a charged silence neither fully understood. Finally, he signed the tablet and stepped away. She left. The call came at midnight. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then she answered. "Avery." His voice was low, controlled but urgent. "Don't move. Stay inside. Lock your door." Her stomach tightened. "What's going on?" "Rivals. They know your face. They may try to use you." She moved toward her apartment window in Siamayan and looked down. 2 dark sedans sat at the curb. Men stepped out slowly, scanning the building. "You're kidding?" she whispered. "I'm sending someone. 5 minutes. Do not open the door." The line ended. Her heart pounded. A heavy knock slammed against her door. "Avery Collins," a voice called out. "Open up." She stepped back toward the kitchen, gripping her helmet tightly. The door exploded inward. 2 masked men rushed in. One grabbed her arm. She swung the helmet hard. He stumbled back. The second reached for her. A gunshot echoed from the hallway. The man holding her fell. Another shot. Silence. Park Jae-hyun stepped through the broken doorway, gun steady in his hand. His eyes searched the room until they found her. He crossed the space quickly and pulled her against him. "You're safe," he said quietly. She pushed against his chest, breath shaking. "You should have warned me sooner." "I did." He did not argue further. He lifted her without asking and carried her out of the apartment. His men secured the hallway. A black SUV waited outside. He placed her inside and slid in beside her. The doors shut. The engine roared to life. The city lights blurred past as they drove into the night. The SUV drove in silence through the sleeping streets of Busan. Avery sat stiffly in the back seat, her mind still racing from the attack. Park Jae-hyun sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body, but neither of them spoke. The city lights blurred past the window as the vehicle climbed toward Dalmaji Hill. When the elevator doors opened, they stepped directly into his penthouse. The space was wide and modern, with glass walls that revealed the dark ocean and scattered lights of Houndy below. Everything inside was clean and sharp, black marble floors, low leather sofas, and soft lighting that made the room feel calm despite what had just happened. "You can use the bathroom down the hall," he said quietly. "There are clean towels." Avery nodded. She felt the tremor in her hands now that the danger had passed. She walked down the hallway without another word. The shower water was hot and steady. She stood beneath it longer than necessary, letting it wash away dust, fear, and the smell of gunpowder. When she stepped out, she realized she had nothing to change into. In the closet of the guest room, she found neatly folded clothes. She chose one of his black shirts. It was oversized on her, falling to mid-thigh. The fabric was soft and warm. When she returned to the living room, Park Jae-hyun was seated on the sectional couch with a glass of whiskey in his hand. A second glass rested on the table. He looked up when she entered. For a moment, neither spoke. She walked over and took the second glass. The whiskey burned slightly as she swallowed, but it steadied her nerves. "You fought them," he said. "I had to." "You shouldn't have had to." His voice carried something different now. Not command. Not control. Something closer to regret. She studied him carefully. The strong posture was still there, but there was tension around his eyes. "This happened because of me," he admitted. "If I had kept distance from the beginning." She interrupted him softly. "You didn't." Silence settled between them. He set his glass down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. For the first time since she met him, he looked uncertain. "I'm used to controlling every situation," he said. "Tonight proved I can't control everything." "That scares you," she said. "Yes." The honesty surprised her. He stood slowly and crossed the space between them. He stopped close but did not touch her. "You were in danger because of my world," he continued. "That's my fault." Avery held his gaze. "Then don't treat me like something fragile." He looked at her as if weighing those words carefully. She stepped closer. The air between them shifted. Not tense like before. Not confrontational. Just quiet and charged. "You don't have to control everything," she said. "You don't have to control me." His hand lifted slowly and brushed against her cheek. The touch was gentle, almost hesitant. "I don't know how to do this without control," he admitted. "Then learn." For a heartbeat, they simply stood there. Then he leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, careful, like both of them were testing something new. His hand moved to the back of her neck, steady but not demanding. She did not pull away. Instead, she stepped closer, resting her hand lightly against his chest. It was not rushed. Not desperate. Just quiet and real. When they finally separated, his forehead rested briefly against hers. "Stay tonight," he said. It was not an order. Avery searched his face. The power he usually carried was still there, but so was something more open. She nodded once. He guided her to the couch and they sat side by side. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass walls. For the first time since she entered his world, she felt something steadier than fear. The night passed quietly. Morning light filtered into the penthouse through narrow blinds. The ocean reflected pale gold under the rising sun. Avery stepped into the kitchen area, still wearing the oversized black shirt. Park Jae-hyun stood at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 dark mugs. He handed one to her without a word. She took a slow sip. The coffee was strong and bitter. "My men secured your building," he said. "The immediate threat is contained." "For now," she replied. "For now," he agreed. She leaned against the counter, studying him carefully. "What happens next?" she asked. "I make sure no one touches you again." "There it is," she said quietly. He frowned slightly. What? The control. He moved closer but stopped at a respectful distance. I'm protecting you. And I appreciate that, she said. But I'm not an object to be guarded. He was silent. You keep talking like I'm leverage, she continued. Or something that belongs in your world because you say so. His jaw tightened. That's not what I. Then don't treat me like that. The words were steady, not angry. I don't want to be controlled, she said. If I stay here it's because I choose to. Not because you decide. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Not pride. Something closer to understanding. I've built my life on control, he said slowly. It's how I survived. And I survived by standing on my own. Silence hung between them. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. Equal ground, she said firmly. He studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll try. It was not a dramatic promise. Not a grand speech. Just a simple agreement. Avery lifted her coffee mug and took another sip. Outside, Busan moved into another day. Inside the penthouse, something had shifted, not into surrender but into balance. Avery did not stop writing. That was the first thing she made clear. She reduced her shifts to daytime hours, choosing safer routes and avoiding isolated alleys, but she refused to sit inside Dalmaji Hill and wait for the world to move around her. Delivery work had paid her rent long before she met Park Jae-hyun. It was part of her independence. The first morning she left the penthouse after staying the night, she felt his gaze on her back. You don't have to do this, he said. I do, she replied, pulling on her helmet. He didn't argue. But when she rode down the hill toward Houndy, a black sedan followed at a distance. She noticed it immediately. That afternoon, when she stopped near Jeonpo Cafe Street to hand off an order, the same car waited across the road. That evening, when she paused at a traffic light, it remained 2 vehicles behind. When she returned to the penthouse, she walked straight into the living room, where Park Jae-hyun stood by the window. You put a car on me, she said. For protection. I didn't agree to that. You don't have to agree to stay alive. The words were calm, but tension sat beneath them. I can't breathe if you control every step I take, she replied. He held her gaze, jaw tight. I'm not controlling you, he said. I'm preventing another attack. And I understand that, she said. But there's a line. Silence filled the room. He didn't remove the security car the next day. But he increased the distance. That was his compromise. One evening, Avery returned later than usual. The autumn air had turned colder and her cheeks were flushed from the wind. She kicked off her sneakers by the door and walked in carrying a small paper bag. I brought tteokbokki, she said casually. From a stall near Siamayan. It smelled too good to ignore. Park Jae-hyun stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, sleeves rolled, city lights glowing behind him. You're late, he said. Traffic. He walked toward her slowly. His eyes moved over her, wind-tangled hair, faint smile, relaxed posture. You act like nothing changed, he said. I'm trying to keep something normal, she replied. Normal doesn't exist here. It does if I choose it. She stepped closer to him. The glass behind him reflected both of them, 2 figures standing against the night skyline. He reached out and caught the edge of her jacket, pulling her gently toward him until their bodies almost touched. You push every boundary I have, he said quietly. Maybe you need them pushed. His hand moved to her waist. Firm but not forceful. I could lock the doors, he said. Keep you here. No risks. You could try. Her voice was steady, challenging but not mocking. His eyes darkened slightly. He backed her slowly toward the window. The cool glass pressed lightly against her back. The city glittered far below. His hand lifted to her face. His thumb brushed along her lower lip. Tell me to stop, he murmured. She searched his eyes. There was no anger there. No command. Just restraint. She shook her head softly. Then don't stop. The kiss that followed was slower than the first. Not rushed. Not uncertain. It deepened gradually, like both of them were learning the shape of something new. His hands slid down her sides, resting at her waist. Hers moved to his shoulders. There was heat between them, but it was controlled. Intentional. When he finally pulled back, his breathing was heavier. I'm not good at this, he admitted. At what? Letting someone matter. The honesty in his voice surprised her again. You're not supposed to be perfect, she said. You're supposed to try. He rested his forehead lightly against hers. I've built everything on power, he said. Control is what keeps my world stable. And partnership is what keeps this stable, she replied. He looked at her carefully. Partnership, he repeated. Yes. Not ownership. Not protection without consent. Partnership. His grip on her waist softened. You don't belong behind locked doors, he said quietly. No. But I don't know how to stop wanting to keep you safe. You don't have to stop, she said. You just have to trust me too. Silence settled between them again. Not tense this time. Steady. He stepped back slightly, giving her space without being asked. That small movement meant more than a grand promise. She smiled faintly. You're learning, she said. He let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Slowly, they moved to the couch together. She opened the paper bag and handed him a piece of tteokbokki. He took it with a raised eyebrow. This is your idea of balance? He asked. Yes. He tasted it. The spice made him pause. She laughed softly. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Inside the penthouse, the distance between them felt different than before. Not controlled. Not claimed. Sure. The balance had shifted, not because one surrendered but because both adjusted. Avery was not expected back that night. Her shift had ended early, and she decided to return to the penthouse without sending a message. The elevator ride to the top of Dalmaji Hill felt quiet, almost too quiet. When the doors opened, something felt wrong. The lights in the main living area were dimmed lower than usual. No soft music. No movement near the window. No sound of coffee being poured or a tablet tapping against glass. She stepped inside slowly. Jaehyun, she called. No answer. The silence pressed against her ears. She moved toward the hallway that led to his study. The door was slightly open. A faint blue glow spilled into the corridor. Inside, Park Jae-hyun stood rigid in front of the wall of security monitors. His back was straight, shoulders tense. He didn't turn when she entered. One of the screens flickered with grainy footage from a back alley behind Nocturne. Two men stood in hooded jackets. One passed a small drive into the other's hand. The second man pulled back his hood briefly. Avery recognized him immediately. Choi Min-suk. The man who had once greeted her at the gate. The man who had escorted her through hallways without a word. The one who had stood quietly in the background for months. What is that? She asked quietly. Park Jae-hyun's voice came flat. He sold your identity. Her stomach tightened. How long? Long enough to know the attack wasn't random. The screen froze on Choi Min-suk's face. He gave them your name. Your building. Your routine. Avery felt the room tilt slightly. And now? She asked. Silence stretched for a few seconds. I handled it. She looked at him carefully. He still hadn't turned around. Handled it how? Permanently. The word hung in the air. No drama. No raised voice. Just final. He finally faced her. There was no anger in his expression. No satisfaction. Just something heavier. Something tired. You didn't tell me, she said. I didn't want you to see this part. This part? She repeated. The part where I become what they already think I am. She stepped closer to him. You think I don't know who you are? His jaw tightened slightly. I built my world on rules, he said. Loyalty above everything. He broke that. And because of that, you decided his life was over. Yes. There was no apology in his voice. But there was strain. She searched his face. Saw the weight of it. Not guilt, but the cost of constant decisions like that. You're not a monster for protecting your world, she said quietly. His eyes flickered. I don't want you standing next to a monster, he replied. She stepped forward until only inches separated them. Then stop pretending that you carry everything alone. His hands hovered at his sides as if unsure whether to reach for her. You think I did this only for my rules? He asked. You did it because he crossed a line, she answered. And because he put me in danger. He didn't deny it. She lifted her hand and touched his face gently. You don't get to push me away from the ugly parts, she said. If I'm here fully. His control cracked for a brief second. I was afraid, he admitted. Not of him. Of losing you. The honesty hit harder than the revelation on the screen. She closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around his neck. He held her tightly as if grounding himself. You don't fight alone anymore, she said against his shoulder. That's the deal. He pulled back slightly to look at her. You're choosing this, he said. Yes. Not because of power. Not because of fear. Because she understood what it meant. He leaned down and kissed her. This kiss was not tentative like the first. It carried weight. Relief. emotion that had been locked behind walls for years. His hands moved along her back, holding her close without urgency. She responded just as firmly, fingers threading into his hair. The tension that had filled the study dissolved slowly, replaced with something deeper and steadier. They moved away from the monitors and the frozen image on the screen. In the quiet of the bedroom, the city lights filtered softly through the curtains. There was no rush, no demand. Just closeness that felt chosen. He rested his forehead against hers. "I'm done hiding parts of myself from you," he said. "Good," she replied softly. Clothes fell away gradually, not in chaos but in trust. Skin met skin, not in aggression but in comfort. Every touch was slower than before, intentional. The last wall between them did not fall with force. It dissolved. Later, as they lay side by side, his arm wrapped around her waist, he looked calmer than she had ever seen him. She traced the line of ink across his collarbone lightly. "You don't have to protect me from your darkness," she said. "And you don't have to carry my world alone," he answered. Outside, Busan glittered without pause. Inside, something final shifted between them. Not ownership. Not rescue. Partnership, sealed not by fear but by choice. Morning arrived quietly over Dalmaji Hill. Soft sunlight filtered through the glass walls of the penthouse, painting pale gold lines across the marble floor. The city below moved as usual, cars gliding through Houndy, distant waves touching the shore, but inside, everything felt still. Avery woke before Park Jae-hyun. For a moment, she watched him in silence. Without the sharp posture and steady command he carried during the day, he looked almost younger. His face was relaxed, the tension that usually sat in his jaw softened by sleep. The events of the night before returned slowly. The monitors. Choi Min-suk's betrayal. The final decision Jae-hyun had made. Avery slipped out of bed and walked toward the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water and stood by the window, staring at the ocean. Footsteps approached quietly behind her. "You're up early," he said. She didn't turn immediately. "Couldn't sleep long." He stopped a few feet away. "The situation is contained," he said. "Anyone connected to it knows not to move again." "For now," she replied. "Yes." She faced him. "There will always be someone," she said calmly. "Someone who wants your position. Someone who wants power." He nodded once. "That's the nature of my world. And I'm in that world now." He stepped closer. "You don't have to be," he said. She held his gaze. "Don't start that again." "I'm serious." "So am I." The air between them remained steady, not tense, just firm. "I won't be treated like leverage," she continued. "Not in conversations. Not in strategy. Not in your mind." His expression shifted slightly. "You think I see you that way?" "I think you're afraid someone will use me that way." He didn't deny it. "I am," he admitted quietly. "Last night proved how easily that can happen." Avery moved closer until only inches separated them. "You don't get to decide my role based on fear," she said. "If I stay here, I stay as your equal. Not as something to guard behind glass." His eyes searched her face carefully. "You're asking me to loosen control in a world built on control," he said. "I'm asking you to trust me." Silence lingered for a few seconds. He ran a hand through his hair slowly. "I've lost people before," he said. "People I thought I could protect. And you think you'll lose me too?" "Yes." The honesty was direct and unguarded. Avery reached out and took his hand. "You don't get to own me," she said softly. "But you also don't have to carry everything alone." He looked down at their joined hands. "Protection doesn't mean locking you away," he said thoughtfully. "No. It means standing beside you." "Yes." He stepped closer and rested his forehead gently against hers. "I don't know how to stop fearing the worst," he admitted. "You don't have to stop fearing it," she replied. "You just don't let it control how you treat me." He exhaled slowly. "And if another threat appears? We face it together." The words were simple but they carried weight. He lifted his head slightly, studying her with a seriousness that had nothing to do with power. "I never planned for this," he said. "You weren't supposed to matter. And yet I do." "Yes." She smiled faintly. "Then stop acting like I'm a weakness." "You're not." "Then what am I?" He didn't hesitate this time. "You're my partner." The words settled between them differently than anything he had said before. Not possession. Not control. Not protection alone. Partnership. Avery squeezed his hand. "Equal ground," she reminded him. He nodded. "Equal ground." He wrapped his arms around her waist, not to restrain but to hold. She rested her hands against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath her palms. The tension that had shadowed the morning eased. Outside, the world continued its quiet movement. Inside, the balance felt clearer. He brushed a soft kiss against her forehead. "No more secrets about decisions that affect you," he said. "And no more pushing me away because you think I can't handle it." Agreed. They stood there for a long moment, not speaking. There was no dramatic promise, no grand declaration. Just understanding. The undercurrent of danger still existed in his world. That would never disappear completely. But something important had shifted. Protection was no longer one-sided. Strength was no longer measured by control. And fear no longer dictated their roles. He reached for 2 mugs and poured coffee. She leaned against the counter beside him. Side by side. Not in shadow. Not behind walls. But standing on the same ground. Time did not return to what it was. But it settled. The days that followed moved in controlled calm. Not peaceful in the ordinary sense, but steady. Security around Dalmaji Hill tightened quietly. Guards rotated more carefully. Routes were reviewed. Cameras were upgraded. Every adjustment was done without noise or display. Park Jae-hyun did not announce these changes to Avery as commands. He explained them. And she listened. That was the difference now. Avery continued riding during the day, though her routes became more strategic. She avoided predictable patterns. She varied her stops. She stayed aware without appearing fearful. A black car still followed her at a distance, but now it was discussed, not imposed. "If I change direction," she told him one evening, "they change direction too. But they don't crowd me." "They won't," he replied. It was no longer about control. It was coordination. In the evenings, she sometimes joined him in the study. The security monitors no longer felt like a wall between them. Instead of shutting her out, he walked her through how he evaluated risks, how alliances were maintained, how lines were drawn without unnecessary violence. "This world survives on discipline," he told her once. "Not chaos." She nodded. "And discipline requires clarity." He looked at her with quiet approval. She did not try to soften the reality of his position. He did not pretend it was clean. The underworld was acknowledged for what it was, structured, calculated, and sometimes harsh. But it was never glorified. It was simply managed. One afternoon, Avery stood by the glass wall overlooking Houndy. The ocean was bright under clear skies. Jae-hyun joined her silently. "You move differently now," he said. "How?" "You don't look over your shoulder." "I'm aware," she replied. "Not afraid." He studied her profile. "And you?" she asked. "I think before I react." She smiled faintly. "That's growth." He let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. They had stopped testing each other. The sharp edges of their early encounters had softened into something steadier. Arguments still happened, but they were no longer about power. They were about perspective. When he made decisions, he included her voice. When she disagreed, she spoke without hesitation. There were no raised voices. No threats disguised as affection. No tension built on dominance. One evening they sat across from each other at the dining table. Papers were spread between them, schedules, property maps, logistical plans. She pointed at one section. "This route overlaps too closely with your club operations," she said. "It creates unnecessary exposure." He looked at the map, then at her. "You're right," he admitted. There was no pride wounded in the admission. Only trust. Later that night they stood on the balcony together. The city lights reflected in the ocean below. "Do you regret staying?" he asked quietly. She considered the question honestly. "No," she said. "Even knowing what my world demands?" "Yes." He rested his forearms on the railing beside hers. "I used to believe strength meant standing alone," he said. "Now I understand it means choosing who stands beside you." She looked at him. "And I used to believe independence meant never relying on anyone," she replied. "Now I understand it means choosing when to." Silence settled between them, but it was comfortable. The tension that once defined their connection had transformed. There was still fire between them, but it was no longer unstable. It was controlled warmth. He reached for her hand. Not to pull her closer. Not to anchor her. Just to hold it. She intertwined her fingers with his easily. They had faced fear, betrayal, and their own habits of control. They had argued, adjusted, and chosen each other again. The underworld still existed. His responsibility still demanded precision. Her independence still mattered. But neither tried to overpower the other anymore. They operated as equal forces, different strengths, same direction. As the wind moved softly around them, Avery leaned her shoulder lightly against his. No declaration. No dramatic vow. Just shared understanding. He looked down at her. Still equal ground? He asked quietly. She squeezed his hand. Equal. The city of Busan stretched endlessly beneath them, alive and complicated. Their world was not simple. It was not innocent. But it was honest. And for the first time since a rainy night delivery behind Nocturne, the connection between them was not built on challenge or tension. It was built on trust. The lights below shimmered against the dark ocean and they stood side by side, not in shadow, not in control, but in partnership. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more interesting stories.